Hello, today I'm going to be making homemade applesauce from the Shirley Courier book. I'm going to do one recipe with Granny Smith apples and one recipe with Red Delicious apples, and half of the recipe I'm going to add sugar and half of the recipe I'm not going to add sugar for both of these. So I'm going to make a total of 4 recipes. And the ingredients I'll be using are those 2 apples with light brown sugar, Morton iodized salt, and ground cinnamon. So I will start by peeling and coring and cutting my apples into wedges. My apples are now peeled, cored, and diced up. So these are my green apples and these are my Red Delicious apples. And now I'm going to place them in a large pot with 3 tablespoons of water and let them simmer for about 20 minutes. The reason you peel the apples is because the peel is more fibrous, so it's harder to break down, and it creates a bitter taste when you cook it. Now I have added 3 tablespoons of water, and all the green apples are in this pot, and the Red Delicious apples are in this pot. And heating the apples will kill the cells, so then they lose water, and then they'll fall apart. And the heating will also denature the cell membranes, which again will control the loss of water, and the pectin substances that hold the cells together are converted to soluble pectins, and then the apples will dissolve. So I'm going to stir these for about 20 minutes until the apples become soft. It's been about 10 minutes, and here are the green apples. They're still kind of firm. I don't know if I cut them too big or what, but the red apples seem to be breaking down a little faster. So I'll let you see them in 10 minutes. It's now been 20 minutes, and here's what the apples look like. They are soft, but I don't think they're soft enough, so I'm going to let them go just a little longer, maybe 2 more minutes. I believe the apples are done. They are mushy and falling apart. So now I'm going to keep half of the apples in this pot and half the apples in this pot and put the other half in 2 separate bowls. Here's the Granny Smith apples that I won't be adding the sugar to. And here's the Red Delicious apples that I won't be adding the sugar to. I'm going to add the salt and the cinnamon to all of these, and then the brown sugar just to these 2. I have added the salt and the cinnamon to these 2, and the salt, cinnamon, and brown sugar to these 2, and now I'm going to mash them up, and the salt is going to help bring out some more of the liquid, and the sugar in these 2 is going to help the fruit maintain their texture longer by slowing down the conservation of pectic substances around the cells. But if you add too much sugar, then the apples will become tough. So this recipe only calls for a 1/2 cup of sugar, and since I'm cutting the recipe in half, I did a 1/4 cup of sugar. So I don't think that'll be enough to make the apples tough. And now I'm going to use a potato masher and mash all these up, and I'll show you the finished product. So here's the final product of the non-sugar Granny Smith apple. This one is a little chunky, but it seems to turn out better. This is the sugar Granny Smith apple, and as you can see, the sugar has drawn out a lot more water than the non-sugar one, so this one looks more like an applesauce. And this is the Red Delicious one without sugar, and it just looks like apple chunks. I think that the Red Delicious apples take a little longer to cook, and that's not something I really realized until later. And here is the Red Delicious applesauce with sugar, and as you can see, it looks a little like there's a little more water in there compared to the non-sugar Red Delicious applesauce, but it's still a little more chunkier. It doesn't quite look like an applesauce. What are your thoughts on the non-sugar Granny Smith applesauce?
A little sour. You're not very sweet.
All right, now let's move on to the sugar Granny Smith applesauce.
It tastes more of the apples you find in apple pie. A little more sweet and flavorful there. Not as sour as that first option.
Okay. Now the Red Delicious applesauce without sugar.
It was more sweet and not as sour as the green apples. That first one, that
And
wasn't.
the Red Delicious applesauce with sugar.
It's also a little more sweet. And I think I like this one the best.
You like this one? The Red Delicious applesauce with sugar?
Correct.
All right, thanks for your input.